Alright, animals, reptiles, and vegetables. Somebody said they turned this video off, the last video, off after 2 seconds because they could tell it was not worth watching, and that's the intro I did. So I think I should do that intro every time to, get rid of those kind of people, so... But anyhow, let's talk about kindness. But before we talk about kindness, let me remind you that my podcast is back, and I put the first all-new episode that I've done in a year and a half or so. I put that up on Monday, and I'm not sure. I might be able to get a second one up tomorrow, or it might come up next Monday. We'll see, but I'm going to be doing all new episodes sort of interspersed with the audio from these what do you call these? Videos. The other thing is my blog is back, and I'm putting chapters of my book that I never finished called The Zen of Godzilla up there. I put a new one up on Monday. You can go read that. I'll put a new one up next Monday. So there you go with that. So I want to talk about kindness because somebody asked me something like, you never talk about kindness, and what's the deal with kindness when it comes to Zen Buddhist tradition? And this is actually kind of relevant to a situation I'm finding myself in right now that's been unfolding over the last couple of weeks or so. So I don't know if I'll get into that. We'll see. But I want to first sort of familiarize you with how kindness, the subject of kindness, is treated in Zen Buddhism. Now, if you happen to go to the San Francisco Zen Center, they will hand out to you, if they're doing chanting that day, this, and you could buy it from their little gift shop for $10, which I did. And this is their daily sutras and verses, right? And for the most part, this consists of sutras and verses that are commonly chanted in the Japanese Zen Buddhist tradition, with two notable exceptions, and the one is the names of the women ancestors, which is something that they don't traditionally chant in Japan, although I've heard they're starting to do it. They usually just chant the names of the male ancestors, but that's not the one I want to talk about. The one I want to talk about is the Lovingkindness Meditation. So if you just went to the San Francisco Zen Center and that's all you knew about the Zen tradition, you would go, oh yeah, Lovingkindness Meditation, that's part of the Zen tradition. And actually a lot of other places who are not the San Francisco Zen Center in America, a lot of other places in America have started chanting this as well. But it's not part of the Zen tradition. Traditionally, this is not chanted in Japanese Zen temples, probably not in Korean ones or Chinese ones or other ones I would assume don't chant it either, because it's part of the Theravada tradition. And I suspect, although I've never been able to confirm this, that the reason the San Francisco Zen Center adopted the Lovingkindness meditation as something they chant from the Pali Canon, if you want to take a screenshot so you can get the whole thing, there you go. But I think that maybe one of the reasons they adopted this is because it sounds kind of Christian. And it might have been something they introduced as a way to ease sort of folks who are more into the sort of Christian charity sort of tradition into Zen, and make Zen seem a little less cold and heartless, because everybody thinks Zen is cold and heartless, which we're going to get into in a minute. But I'll just give you one section of the Lovingkindness meditation in case you're not familiar with it. This isn't the whole thing, but this will give you a sense of what's in there. May all beings be happy. May they be joyous and live in safety. All living beings, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, small or great, visible or invisible, near or far, born or to be born, may all beings be happy. And it goes on from there, and with basically the same sentiments and on and on. In the Zen tradition, though, if you look up the word kindness, which I spent some time yesterday. People who think I don't spend any time on these videos, I do. I spent some time looking through Dogen's works and trying to find instances where he'd used the word kindness. And there's not too many of them, but there are a couple of notable exceptions which I would like to read to you. And when I say a couple, I mean two. The first one comes from Keisei Sanshiki, which is the voices of the river valley and the form of the mountains. It is a chapter in Shobogenzo, Volume 1, if you're looking at the Nishijima Cross translation, and it comes on the third page of that. And it's also, since it's in Volume 1 of Shobogenzo Nishijima Cross translation, it is in my book, Don't Be a Jerk, although I can't remember how I translated it in Don't Be a Jerk, but here's the sort of more official version from Nishijima Roshi and Mike Cross. Zen Master Kyogen Chikan was learning the truth in the order of Zen Master Dai Daien. On one occasion, Dai says, "You are sharp and bright, and you have wide understanding. Without quoting from any text or commentary, speak a phrase for me in the state you had before your parents were born." Kyogen searches several times for something to say, but he is not able. He deeply regrets the state of his body and mind, and looks through books that he has kept for years, but he is still dumbfounded. In the end, he burns all the writings he has collected over the years and says, "A rice cake that is painted in a picture cannot stave off hunger," and he vows to figure this thing out. So saying, he spends years and months as a server of meals. The monk who serves the morning gruel and midday meals means one who waits upon other monks at breakfast and the midday meal. He's just explaining something in Japanese that is written in Chinese. While he is thus occupied, he says to Dai, Chikan, that's himself, me, I am dull in body and mind and cannot express the truth. Would the master say something for me? Dai says, I would not mind saying something for you, but if I did so, perhaps you would bear a grudge against me later. After spending years and months in such a state, Chikan enters Butozan Mountain following the tracks of National Master Daisho, and he makes a thatched hut on the remains of the National Master's hermitage. He has planted bamboo and makes it his friend. I like that he made the bamboo his friend. He's so lonely. His only friend was the bamboo that he planted. One day, while he is sweeping the path, a piece of tile flies up and strikes a bamboo with a crack. Hearing this sound, he suddenly realizes the great state of realization. He bathes and purifies himself facing Daizan Mountain, that's the mountain where his former teacher is. He burns incense and does prostrations, then, directing himself to Master Dai, who's not there, he's far away, he says, Great Master Dai, if you had explained it to me before, how would this thing have been possible? The depth of your kindness surpasses that of a parent. And then there's a verse that follows that, and that's that story. So that's the first story of kindness. Now here's another story of kindness that's, well, both of these are quite famous in the Zen tradition. So, if you want to say you're into Zen, you should know these stories. This one shows up in Master Dogen's Shinji Shobogenzo, as translated by Guro Nishijima and assisted by Jeremy Pearson and Mike Letchford. And it is case number 27. It also appears in a number of other books, in the Record of Lin Chi, and it appears in Dogen's extensive record a few times. But this is sort of a very complete version. It's also part of several koan collections, but I'm just going to read you my teacher's version of it. And he gives the Japanese pronunciation of the names of the teachers in question. A lot of publications these days choose the Chinese. So it involves Master Rinzai, who's often called Lin Chi, and Master Obaku, who is often called in Chinese Huangpo. Okay. Master Rinzai Gigen of Rinzai Temple in the Qin district has been living in the order of Master Obaku Kiyun for 3 years, so he's the student of Obaku of Huangpo. And his conduct was sincere and pure. The head monk praised him by saying, even though he is a student who began Buddhist study only recently, he is different from other monks. Then he persuaded Master Rinzai to go to the master of the temple and ask a question. So this is Master Rinzai going to ask his teacher a question. What is the great purpose of Buddhism that has been transmitted from authentic master to authentic disciple? Master Obaku struck Master Rinzai at once, even before he had finished speaking. On asking the question 3 times, Master Obaku struck him each time. In some versions, he hits him 10 times each time, so that'll come up later. Or maybe it's 20 times each time. Anyway, more than once. Then Master Rinzai went back to the Shuso, to the head monk, and said, It was good fortune to receive your benevolence. You made me ask the master a question. I asked the question 3 times, and each time he hit me with his stick. I deeply regret that I am unable to understand the profound meaning of the master's behavior, because my own poor state hinders me. Therefore, I would like to leave the temple for a while. The head monk said, if you want to leave the temple, you have to say goodbye to the master. Then you may leave the temple. The head monk visited the master's room beforehand, before Obaku went there, and said, the young student who asked you the question has the ability to follow the rule of the universe. When he comes to you to say goodbye, please be good enough to offer him some teaching. If we prune him, he will become a great tree and provide cool shade for people of the world. Master Rinzai, who, by the way, I didn't say this before, but he is the he's the founder of what became the Rinzai sect of Buddhism, of Zen Buddhism. Master Rinzai went to the master to Huangpo, to Obaku's private room, to say his farewells. The master said, do not go any place other than the one I will tell you. Go to see Master Koan Daigu. When Master Rinzai arrived at the temple of Master Daigu, the master asked him where he'd come from. Master Rinzai said, Obaku. Master Daigu said, what words did Master Obaku use? Master Rinzai said, I asked him a question 3 times, and I was struck 3 times. I don't know whether I did something wrong or not. Master Daigu said, Master Obaku has such a kind heart, like that of an old woman, sometimes of an old grandmother is the other translation you often see, that he completely wore himself out for you, but you cannot recognize his kindness. You say that you do not know whether you made a mistake or not. Hearing these words, Master Rinzai attained the truth. Then he said, there was not so much to Master Obaku's Buddhism after all. Master Daigu grasped Master Rinzai and said, you child of a demon in a bed of urine. That's a weird translation. Sorry, apologies to Nishijima Roshi. Usually it's something like, you demonic bedwetting child, which is probably more what's meant. Anyway, here we go. Just a moment ago you said you couldn't recognize whether you had made a mistake or not. Now you say there's not so much to his Buddhism. What principle do you have? Say something now. Say something now. Master Rinzai struck Master Daigu's side 3 times with his fist. Master Daigu, leaving him, said, I will have nothing more to do with you. And he said, in other versions, he said, you're Master Obaku's student. Leaving the temple, Master Rinzai went back to Mount Obaku. Master Obaku said, you go back and forth many times. How can you have time to attain the truth? Master Rinzai said, I came back here just because your mind is so kind, like that of an old woman. Again, like an old granny in other translations. Master Rinzai saluted the master by prostrating to him and then stood up and remained standing there. Master Obaku asked, where did you go and return from? Master Rinzai said, following the master's suggestion, I went to the temple of Master Daigu. Master Obaku said, what words did Daigu use? Master Rinzai told him of his encounter with Master Daigu. Master Obaku said, if you come here, I will strike you at once. Master Rinzai said, why do you wait for me to come? I can be struck at once. And then he slapped Master Obaku's face with the palm of his hand. Master Obaku said, this strange madman coming to my temple to rub the beard of a tiger. Actually, in other translations, it's to pull the whiskers of a tiger, which is probably best. Better translation. Sorry again, Mr. Nishijima Roshi. Master Rinzai cried katsu at once, which is kind of a nonsense sound that's sort of a way of capping some encounter that's often used. Master Obaku said to his assistant, take this strange madman to the Zazen hall to live, which means he's accepting him once again as a student. And there's a nice commentary on there by Nishijima Roshi, but I'll let you find that yourselves and read that. There's a shorter version of this that appears in Eihei Koruku Dogen's extensive record, in which Dogen tells the story in a short version. He says, after Linji, being Rinzai, was hit 60 times with Huangbo's staff, he visited Goan and so forth, and he describes the meaning of this with a poem, which doesn't rhyme in this version. The eye on the tip of a staff is like 100,000 suns, shining through old dreams to bring awakening. The painful place of neither punishment nor reward is intimate. How could the kindness of a grandmother's mind be so small? Which is kind of ironic praise of how kind the Linji was, or Rinzai was, for hitting Obaku. Is that it? Yeah. No, obaku was for hitting rinzai. Sorry, I always get these things confused, but you got it. You spotted that mistake. Anyhow, this is an interesting kind of lesson on the real meaning of kindness. And I think what happens often in life is that people are very attracted to this kind of loving kindness meditation, sort of metta is what they call it, kindness. May all beings be happy, may they be joyous and live in safety, may, and all this other stuff. That's very attractive to people. This other kind of grandmotherly kindness, which is, I hate to use the phrase like tough love, but it's a bit, similar to that idea, not exactly the same, is less attractive. And you can go too far in either direction. I think that's probably obvious. Maybe it's not that obvious, because I think we are very well aware of going too far in the direction of so-called grandmotherly kindness, of Huangpo smacking Rinzai on the head with his staff. We're well aware of what dangers lie in going too far in that direction. So much talk is given to going too far in that direction that I feel personally like I don't even need to address that. You already know that, so I'm not worried that you're going to go too far in that direction. What I see happening a lot more in the world, and what I'm seeing happening around me in my own sort of personal life that's going on at this very moment as I'm making this video, is people who go too far in the other direction, who are very much in this idea of giving this kind of loving kindness, may everybody be safe and happy, whether weak or strong, in this kind of loving, cuddly embrace that shelters and cares for somebody, and tries to protect them from anything that might harm them. I'm seeing a lot of that in my own personal life, and I think a lot of people do encounter that, which is why I thought it was worth making a video, where it is causing a tremendous amount of problems for at least two of the people in my life, because they have others in their lives who are dedicated to this kind of meta loving kindness stuff, when really what the people in question actually need is a bit more of the grandmotherly kindness. And I'm not saying literally hitting them on the head with a stick, but they need a little bit of that, or maybe a lot in one of these cases I'm thinking of this kind of grandmotherly kindness that's a kind of tough kindness, that's doing something that might feel, as Dogen says, what does he say? The painful place of neither punishment nor reward is intimate. So it's not punishment, it's not reward, because reward would be, a cuddly, nice feeling, but it's definitely not punishment. It's a kind of kindness that expresses itself in that other way. And I think it's important to realize that, because part of the problem, as I see it, is a lot of this sort of meta, loving kindness, sort of may all beings be happy kind of kindness, is born out of things that aren't quite as good as they look. Because it looks very good in the outside to be, loving kindness, protect you and keep you safe kind of thing. That looks very good, but that's precisely the problem. Because it looks so good, a lot of people are driven to this sort of meta, loving kindness sort of kindness, rather than the grandmotherly kindness, in quotes, of the Zen tradition. They are driven to it by a desire that's not very wholesome, a desire to be perceived as a good person. So everybody will perceive you as a good person if you do that. And the person who needs the more grandmotherly kindness, again in quotes, of the Zen tradition, will also perceive you as being a good person, and often that is the motivation. It seems to be, in the case that I'm watching unfold in my life, definitely the motivation to be perceived as a good person by the person who really needs a bit of grandmotherly kindness, let's say. And also it's often born, again in my situation that I'm watching unfold, it's exactly this, out of an avoidance to do something that's that's pretty difficult. It's very difficult to do this kind of grandmotherly kindness. I think in the moment, it's often, it seems to be much easier to be that kind of embracing, cuddling, protective sort of kindness. But in the long run, I'm seeing it again in my own life, causing tremendous harm, tremendous, probably irreversible harm, or to reverse the kind of harm that's been done over 25 years of this sort of behavior is going to take a lot of years of therapy and stuff, and it's going to take the person involved finally owning up to the fact that she is the cause of her own problems, which she's got somebody in her life who's not going to let that happen, is not going to let her see that she's the cause of her own problems. And it's sad to see that, and sorry for venting, but I, as I said, I'm venting this because I think this is a rather common situation. I don't think it's unique to me. It's just that I happen to be going through it right now. And the other tough part is when you do what I did just yesterday, and you are the person who administers the actual grandmotherly kindness, then you're going to be tarred as the bad guy in the situation. And sometimes you have to accept that people for probably the next decade or so are going to see me as the bad guy. And maybe in a decade or so, once the person in question kind of comes to her senses and realizes, I hope it happens eventually, that she was the one who caused all this trouble, then maybe I won't be seen as the bad guy anymore, but in 10 years I might not even be around anymore, because you guys who know my age, there's still people who think I'm 35. No, I'm 57. So we'll see if I make it another 10 years to see this situation turn around. I'm not necessarily counting, well, I'm hoping I live another 10 years, but I'm not necessarily counting on this situation ever resolving. Because right now it doesn't look like it ever will. But that's fine. That's my problem. And I hope this is useful to some of you out there who might be having similar issues. Because, like I say, I think it's a very common issue. So there you go. If you want to support me administering grandmotherly kindness to people who need it, you can send a donation to the URL you're seeing on the screen, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is my only way of making a living. But I am going to go to Europe. I'm going to Finland, Germany, and France in just a couple of weeks. And I didn't announce this because, as you know, things have been sort of touch and go in the world these days, and I wasn't quite sure, but now the situation's been finalized and I'm definitely going. So if you're in Finland, Germany, or France, I'll try to get the specifics of where I'm going to be up on my blog within the next few days, so in case you want to join me in some of these events. I think most of them are full right now, but anyway, I'll put that up. So you can send me. I'll make a little bit of money, but it looks like I'm not going to make. I might just squeeze by on this travel this time, because it's costing so much to go over there and there's so much involved. But that's why I appreciate your donations. Sorry for going on so long. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't have to donate. If you don't want to donate, I'll make it, I'm sure. But I do appreciate those donations. So have a good time all the time. See you later. Bye. How you doing, Zeke? Are you having a good time? Are you going to catch that fly? Yeah, he's chasing a fly around. Hey, Ziggy. Say hi to the folks.